Today we end the reveal stream for episode Revenant, and while this was mainly showcasing of what's to come with Act 1 of Revenant, we also got some details about Codename Frontiers and its upcoming changes. The stream was also formatted to separate both of these discussions, so we're gonna have timestamps down below, but essentially, this video is more or less a TLDR of everything that was revealed today, starting with Revenant. It was here that we have Jerome, the senior narrative designer, Clayton, the staff designer, and Chris Proctor, the sandbox craft lead. The reveal here starts with a bit of lore and story discussion. Essentially, the echo that we saw leave the Traveler has now fallen to Fickle, and this has caused the Scorn to change, and Fickle himself is evolving. My man looking jacked! Now in the process of him evolving, so is his army, and what's necessary to grow Scorn and evolve them is a bunch of corpses. It'll be in this episode that we team up with Mithrax and Ido and other Lixni to take on Fickle, and it's going to be Ido who brings us her knowledge to help us craft tonics to battle this evolving Scorn army. Now this then goes into potion crafting, and we got to see this up close, but there is essentially going to be two flavors here at the apothecary, a combat flavor and a reward flavor. Essentially, combat will boost things like artifact mods. You can even see this in the artifact mods that we saw on stream, where there is a boost here that will unlock with specific tonics. To take this even further though, there are higher tier tonics that will boost multiple artifacts. Now reward tonics, you get attune, which will allow you to farm for specific weapons. Now it was mentioned that these weapons are not craftable, these being the seasonal weapons, but they can be enhanced. So it appears here, guys, that RNG is back on the table. Overall though, I really like the layout here of the apothecary. And by the way, for my anime lovers, Apothecary Tales, please watch it, one of the best animes ever. Now Bungie also revealed one of the activities that they've revamped this episode, that being Onslaught. Onslaught is being revamped and now called Onslaught Salvation. They've added 3 new maps, they've even added new defenses, new enemy factions, that being Scorn, as well as Shadow Legion Cabal. And funny enough, the Shadow Legion after the Fallout are in disarray, and so they're really just grasping to align themselves with anyone that has power, hence the alliance here with Fickle. Now the only map we got to see is Widow's Court. This is now going to be revamped into an Onslaught map, and you'll notice here, guys, that the enemy layout is much faster paced than what you would expect from such a big map. Now Onslaught will have the playlist 10 wave mode, the normal 50 wave mode, and then an expert 50 wave mode as well, which is essentially what we have now. Now Onslaught is not power fix, it is power enabled, meaning at the start it will be more difficult as we'll need to level up and commit to that power grind. Now interestingly enough, they've upgraded some of the defenses. For instance, the turret from Destiny 1's Moon has been added here, and they mentioned that there's going to be a tier 3 upgrade which gives you scorching rounds, which makes me wonder, can it synergize with Solo 3.0? There's also going to be a new airstrike defense. This has 3 cannons when you upgrade it, and anywhere you mark, when an enemy walks over that area, it will call an airstrike in at that location. Now that's a wait for someone to come over and essentially activate that area, similar to that of like a trip mine, so you don't want to waste it. Now trip wires are being updated. They now explode with stasis slow fields, with higher tiers giving stasis crystals, with the trip wire update being available in normal Onslaught as well. Now during this gameplay, we also got to see the episode season pass exotic Alanthanium. This is a primary ammo stasis grenade launcher. Now, it was mentioned it's like a micro missile grenade launcher like Mountaintop, but essentially defeating enemies allows you to gather remnants, which would then fill a bar. And at 50% of this bar, you could special reload and then shoot to spawn a special ammo brick. At 100%, this will spawn a heavy ammo brick. And don't be deceived, guys. Even though it looks like it's going to be a support weapon, watching the gameplay, it puts out. Now, in the same conversation, it was brought up that Fighting Lion, our other primary ammo grenade launcher, is getting a buff where it will now make enemies volatile, which is very good. Now Fickle's Scorn will be getting a Revenant Baron. This is a new boss that when killed, you have to hunt down a totem that it spawns, otherwise it will revive itself. So kind of similar to Hive Guardians. Now, wave 30, you get a small chance of a fully masterworked double perk episodic weapon, with expert onslaught giving double chests and thus more chances at those multi-perk rolls. Now, Banes are going to be making their first appearance in expert mode only. We actually saw today Berserk and Meteor Banes during the live stream. Now, Crow will be featured prominently in this episode, as we saw in the dialogue. This is because of his relationship with Fickle, which means at some point we're probably going to have that awkward conversation where Fickle realizes that Crow is no longer daddy. Now, later they also mentioned that Moth Yard will be getting updated in original Onslaught to make it a shorter experience. And what I really got from that is that they're going to be consolidating the enemies, having them spawn in closer to the objectives. Now, for some details that aren't just inside of Onslaught, they spoke about new weapons and perks on top of some general changes. We saw a burst fire shotgun being used. It also seems to have the search party origin trait, so this should be a Festival of the Lost weapon. Now you heard that right, a burst fire shotgun, and it actually looked like a burst fire slug to me. Now there's also going to be a double fire stasis grenade launcher seasonal weapon, which has the new perk Envious Arsenal. Chris Proctor brought this up, and he stated that this was specifically targeted at damage rotations, essentially dealing damage with both other weapons in your loadout will reload it. And they also mentioned that this same weapon has chill clip. Now there's going to be a new hand cannon that has a new perk called Rhyme Stiller, where defeating stasis debuff enemies grants frost armor, and it will also have headstone. You can imagine the synergy here. There's going to be a new SMG that's an arc precision, which has an amazing perk that ties into jolt. And essentially what I got from this is that it will be triggered on sustained damage. So instead of it being like bolt shot where you get a kill, then reload, and you got jolt that can now be applied to enemies, this is something where you could just blow your load into an enemy and boom, you've got jolt being applied. Now the conversation brought up Icebreaker as well, and about its return. And Bungie stated that they were holding off due to ammo economy issues, but they said that Icebreaker now will let you get back into its original fantasy without letting you plink away at range. Essentially, assists or final blows with other weapons generate ammo for Icebreaker. But then they brought up the name Icebreaker, and they said there's going to be a new synergy here leaning into the name of the weapon. So I guess we're going to get some benefits for breaking stasis shards. Again, stasis didn't exist back in Destiny 1. Icebreaker, I don't really know the lore behind that name, but leaning into that here makes a lot more sense. Now the new artifact, Slayer Baron Apothecary Satchel, was also presented to us, and we already touched on this in great depth, but as you see here guys, it leans heavily into grenade launchers, heavily into stasis. Returning favorites like Breach and Clear and grenade launchers overall are looking to be the standout weapons of choice in this next episode. By the way, if you want to check out our video on artifact mods, we'll have a link to that down below. Next up are actually some wider game changes that were mentioned mainly about activities. Our old favorite Strike Inverted Spire will be returning. Bungie actually adjusted all of the encounters, which means it's probably going to be a lot more difficult, similar to like what they did with Lake of Shadows. Now arriving with Act 2 of Revenant, we're going to be getting something inspired by a fan favorite activity from Destiny 1. Now immediately everyone was like, yo, this is SRL, but DMG actually came out and said, no, SRL is not coming back in Revenant. Now he didn't say it's not coming back at all, but he did say specifically here, not coming in Revenant. Now considering the theme of this episode, I think it's safe to say Prison of Elders will most likely be returning. You've got the Fallen, you've got the Scorn, you've got Fickrel. Prison of Elders was something that came out in House of Wolves in Destiny 1 Year 1, and it was kind of like Destiny's first stab at a horde mode that actually posed a lot of difficulty, at least initially. I'm curious to see how they're going to bring it back though here in D2. Now the new Skimmer, the Zerf board, will be coming to us, and fellas, let me just say it is a sexy looking Skimmer. Now surprisingly, this thing is only going to be available from Xur, and it's only going to cost 97 strange coins. Now the reason why I bring it up as surprising is that I thought it was going to be a lengthier quest to get the Skimmer, or perhaps there was going to be a hard paywall, but 97 strange coins, dude, that's no problem. A very easy grind. And if you haven't played Destiny in a long time, guys, down below, we'll have a link to our Xur video. It's an entire guide on how Xur works now, how his reward structure is, all that jazz. Now, the new dungeon Vespers hosts will be having a dungeon race through Twitch Rivals. There's also going to be a hoodie and a bracelet that's earnable, which I gotta say, the hoodie looks fire. Now, Festival of the Lost. This is our Halloween event. Bungie showed off the wizard armor set that everyone voted on earlier this year. Hunters and Warlocks have the evil wizard look, which I gotta say, guys, looks so good. Like substantially better than our Titans here. I'm not saying that the Titan look is bad. It's just not as cool looking to me as the evil wizard look. But for some reason, Titans, you voted for the good wizard set, which is an absolute throw. Then we move on to the next portion of the reveal stream. This one was all about Frontiers. It's here that Andy brought in Allison, who's our narrative director, and Robbie Stevens, our assistant game director. Now the discussion began with a bit about how 2 annual expansions will work. They called them medium in size, and then began explaining what medium-sized expansions mean. Their philosophy is moving from 1 really big tentpole moment at one point in the year to now 2 big tentpole moments, bringing fresh content and stories to move the direction of Destiny forward. Now these DLCs will be about the same size as Rise of Iron, which I found pretty interesting. They did say Shadowkeep, they said Rise of Iron, which many of my Destiny veteran players look at that expansion very favorably. Now what comes with it is each expansion will have its own version of a campaign and a post-game experience that you can dive really deep into. Now they compared it to further secrets like what we engaged with in the Dreaming City and the Pale Heart, and the big goal is to make these expansions really replayable. Each expansion will tell great stories and have unique campaigns and unique activities. Now these are brand new experiences. The first DLC next year, codename Apollo, is a journey to a Metrovania-inspired destination. This will be our first non-linear campaign, essentially putting us in the driver's seat of exploring the world. Now, they mentioned when deciding to lean into this, they knew that the story had to match the non-linear gameplay, which is going to be kind of a surprise for us as Destiny players. We've always had like this very linear campaign experience, a lot of hand-holding, but for the first time, we as Guardians are going to decide where we want to go first, which means one person's play experience could be completely different to the next person's. Now, they didn't mention that there's going to be your normal type of dialogue as well as story threads that you would expect, but that these threads will essentially chain together. It's our approach that's going to be completely left up to us. Now, they emphasize that Destiny's story is not going anywhere and that this new DLC structure has two parts to it. Part one is pacing. With two big DLCs that can move the story forward, it will feel like Destiny's story is progressing faster. Part two is focus, where they don't need to worry about padding and adding filler. This is essentially where they can narrow in on what the story is trying to tell. I'll say, as someone who's been tackling Destiny content for years, it was a little odd last year when suddenly it was like, okay, we've got to take on the witness. He's in the Pale Heart. What are we gonna do? We're gonna learn about Maya and Kiyomi's romantic relationship. Let's be real, fellas. It was filler. Not saying that the story points didn't add to the game, but it wasn't part of the main plot. Maya's revelation didn't play a pivotal role in taking on the witness. So I actually kind of like that Bungie's taking this approach where they're narrowing the story down. Keep in mind, guys, there will be no handholding. They even mentioned directly that the system where you talk to person A and then talk to person B, and you sit there and you listen to this prompt and that prompt, they're moving away from that. And this next year's expansion will be deliberately shaking up patterns of stories. Some of that will be starting here in Revenant and then fully amping up into Codename Apollo. Now, you may be wondering, Cross, what is the reason for all of this? Well, they mentioned that they want the players out in the world. They want us exploring. And I gotta say, if there's one thing Bungie's really lost, it is that exploration side. I would love a reason to tackle the world, to stay in it, to find secrets. And they brought some concept art to also show. And be honest, guys, I couldn't really tell much, but they did mention that the first is a new destination with people we have never met. Very interesting look, guys. I'm not sure who these people are. The second concept art is these rock pillars. Now, they mentioned in this that they wanted it to feel like an exotic world tailored around the joy of discovery. And essentially, we'll be discovering powerful abilities to then uncover those secrets. So almost like Deep Sight from Savathun's Throne World. Now, finishing up the story and expansion structure discussion, they gave us one little teaser for Frontiers. Allison says, imagine going into a big, nice mansion. The owner tells you there's a secret door. You go up to a bookcase or a statue that's been in front of your face the whole time, but your focus just hasn't been on it. You hit that secret switch, and then suddenly a dead end is now an entryway. Now, from this analogy, guys, what I'm getting from it is that whatever it is, it's already been staring at us. Wherever we're going, there's been a secret door right there that we've been walking past for years inside of Destiny. The question is, where? Where's the big mansion? Where's the statue on the bookcase? And of course, where does that secret door take us? Now, the next thing that was brought up was some system changes that would be coming with Frontiers. That being our next generation of armor. Think of this as like Armor 3.0, and we cover this in more depth in our blog post breakdown. But essentially, armor pieces will have less stats rolled on them, essentially being focused into 3 stats. Now, even more interesting is that stats can now go all the way up to 200. If you look in the game right now, 100 is the cap for everything. Yes, you can have 150 resilience, but you're not going to get any benefits for it. Next year, with these changes, there will be escalating bonuses from decreased cooldown to a chance to multiply ability charges. So the closer you get to that 200 mark, the more potent that chance will be. Now, armor sets will also be having set bonuses added to them. Think of this as like origin traits being added to our armors. We got to look at these in the blog post, and let me just say, guys, they look good. And this is just the beginning sets. You'll get armor set bonuses for wearing 2 pieces of an armor set, or committing completely and wearing 4 pieces of an armor set. Or you can do 2 and 2. Now, they also briefly mention weapons in Frontiers. Essentially, right now we have adepts and raid weapons as tiers of weapons in aspiration. They want to hit that bar of aspiration when continuing to make weapons. They mentioned tiers a lot, and this will likely interface with the weapon tiers that were revealed to us a bit ago during the Frontier blog posts. Now, continuing to talk about the weapon chase, there will be new weapons with every release. That's not slowing down. They also mentioned that weapon reprisals and how they don't want to have bake them, and they think hard about reprisals and revisions, as they want to bring it back, not just how you remembered it, but better. And the comparison they made is how they handled weapons with Into the Light. Oh, and they revealed that Chroma Rush is coming back. Yeah, Andy just literally dropped that. He's like, yeah, Chroma Rush coming back. Now, the last thing they mentioned was about the previously revealed customizable difficulty, as well as the modifiers that are coming. They are going to be building this all into a structure so that we need this new high-end loot, armor sets, armor bonuses, stat distributions to take on some of the hardest challenges. Essentially, guys, Bungie is looking to breathe life into the challenge of the game. So that's it, fellas. That is our TLDR version for Revenant Act 1 and the Frontiers discussion. If you missed our video on Arbor 3.0, we've got a link of that down below. Artifact mods, we have a link to that as well. To my folks that watched the stream earlier and the live cut and this TLDR version, thank you so much. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.